Hello and welcome, I'm the Rambling Director, and this is among the last of the videos I will be doing in front of my regular setup before we move to the Christmas tree setup, and then we'll be moving back here after the first of the year. I even got my nondescript, zero-calorie cranberry ginger ale. Not going to show you the label because this video is not sponsored. But I am ready for the holiday season. And you know what, every time we start getting into the Christmas season, you know what I want to watch? Horror movies. I have no idea why, I'm just a little effed up. And this is one of my favorite Phantom movies and one of my favorite horror movies. The Robert Englund 1989 Phantom of the Opera. Sorry, I mean Gaston Leroux's Phantom of the Opera. Much like all of the others, it has absolutely nothing to do with Gaston Leroux's book, so it's a little questionable why they put that in the title. I kind of wish they hadn't, because there are so many versions that do that, and yet they have nothing to do with the book, which makes me just wonder why they couldn't have left that title for me. I hate to be petty, but my production is the only one that actually gives it. I'm sorry, my dog just hit the tripod. My production is the only one that gives a darn about the book. Yet my version could not be named Gaston Leroux's Phantom of the Opera, otherwise it'd be confused with a million other versions. Now, the first thing to mention about this version is it has great music by Misha Siegel. This film starts in the modern day, which would have been in the 80s, or early 90s, depending on when you're watching it. Jill Schoelen plays our Christine for the evening, and her name actually is Christine this time. How about that? Christine is an operatic singer who's auditioning for a show, and she gets her friend Meg to help her look for an original piece to audition for. Now, the film is dedicated to separating itself from the musical. In fact, that was one of the stated goals that they had coming into this production, and being very much its own thing. Yet there is a lot of fun little references in it. Also, this film is directed by Dwight H. Little, and if you've watched many of my videos, you know who that is and why it puts a smile on my face. They find the music Don Juan triumphant. And this gets a little bit of Eric's backstory. He was apparently a serial killer who wrote this great, beautiful music, but it's kind of obscure now. Wonder why? Maybe we'll find out. Now, Christine goes to find the rest of the score, and this awesome effect happens. Now, of course, this was not done digitally, but I have to wonder how they did do it. Was it simply a composite? Was it some sort of effect where the blood actually came through the letters? I don't know, but it is really cool. It's a little bit like the opening of a Goosebumps episode. I really like it. As Christine goes to the audition, we see a mysterious figure up top who is never directly shown, never really even mentioned, but it's a nice little bit of foreshadowing for what comes at the end of the film. As Christine auditions, she's hit by a sandbag, falls backwards, and is transported to her past life as a Victorian opera singer. That's right, this version takes place in England. And what I do appreciate is they just made her an American singer who comes to perform at this opera house. This is also the most 80s transition you'll ever see. This was right at that time period where the 80s weren't sure if they were going to die, and the 90s weren't sure if they were going to continue what the 80s were doing. The first time we see Eric, he's sewing skin onto his face, sort of like a skin graft. And in fact, the makeup on Robert Englund is really creative. They make his real face look like a mask, and yet he doesn't lose the ability to emote or do really creative stuff as an actor. They mysteriously and perfectly build up the mystery around Eric, even though we've seen him already. And when he's around Christine, talking to her in the dressing room, because we don't have the same context as the other movies or even the stage show, we're left to wonder exactly what he's planning and what he wants from her. We also see that one of the managers just really has a thing for Carlotta, and she doesn't seem to be reciprocating that. But there is a great moment of horror when Carlotta opens her dressing room, wardrobe, and she finds the body of Joseph Bouquet, who has been skinned alive. In fact, he's still alive and begging for help when we see him. It's a wonderful, gory moment of horror. Very effective, very, it's the sort of thing I honestly wonder why it wasn't in more slasher movies, because it's very effective. The police come in to investigate, and when we see that they have already started hunting for Eric, we get the idea that Eric is in fact a serial killer, as stated at the beginning, and this is not the first time they've seen his work. Now, I don't have any special attachment to them keeping the story set in France, whether it's England or America or wherever else, but I really do like using anachronistic time periods. I've never liked the idea of putting Phantom in the modern day. I feel like, for one, it'd be very hard to pull off without changing the story in some very serious ways, and there would be kind of a lack of logic to why Eric wouldn't just go get plastic surgery. Even if he was burned, you just have to imagine he would just go and get his face fixed. But the gaslit streets of Victorian England around the time of Jack the Ripper is a fantastic time period and a fantastic setting for your serial killer Eric. In Box 5, Eric watches Faust, and he's waiting for Christine's debut. But as Faust sells his soul to the devil, we also see Eric Dessler flash back and give us his origin story. Turns out Eric sold his soul himself to actually literally Satan. That's right, like the real Satan. Like, this is not a metaphor or something for the music industry. No. Like, he actually sold his soul to Satan himself. He did this so that his music would be immortal and live among the greats. But of course, the Prince of Lies isn't very known for his honesty. So the devil deforms Eric. Now, personally, I love this change. If you're going to actually make the Phantom of the Opera supernatural, this is a pretty cool way to do it. And I like the reasoning behind it. Satan basically says, you'll be loved for your music, but nothing else. And he makes it so that Eric can never be loved by any other person. He would be so scary that nobody could look at him and love him. That's where Eric's deformity comes from. So it actually is, and I think a lot of people overlook this, it is the same problem for Eric. He just wants to be loved for himself, but that is actually impossible. Even though he can manufacture a way for people to see him as somewhat normal, it's impossible for him to continuously do that. He can't keep up the ruse. This is also why he must continually skin his victims. He needs new skin to sew onto his face, because the deformity is kind of an open, festering wound, and it seems to be deteriorating over time. Especially, I suppose, because as he grafts new skin onto it, the skin doesn't seem to always be taking. And either that could be the lack of correct blood type, or it could be because the wound is cursed and simply will not take a skin graft. Either way, it is a really cool idea. So unlike the other Phantoms who hide behind a traditional mask, he has kind of this Leatherface thing going on. It's really fascinating to see. An odd little plot element is that Eric's music becomes obscure, while he ends up becoming immortal. Now, this is exactly the opposite of why he sold his soul. So, why would this happen? Well, I have a couple theories. This could be explained in one of two ways. The first is that clearly Satan is a liar, and the entire contract could have been fraudulent and only there to procure Eric's soul. The other option is that Eric's music never became popular. It has never achieved that status, and so maybe he is just meant to live forever until his music does become among the greats like Beethoven and Mozart. Maybe he's just never written something he thought was good enough, and so he never published it. After all, we at least know that Don Juan Triumphant is not finished, and hasn't been for 100 years by the time the movie starts. I know I'm spending a lot of time on that, but you really do have to stop and think about it, because it's not really well explained in the film. I think the scenes where Eric sees Christine on stage for the first time, and he's like a little boy watching her with utter delight, I think it's kind of touching. Now, Christine, of course, is a big success, but one of the managers actually gets a critic to write a negative review of her because he has the hots for Carlotta. He doesn't want to lose Carlotta. So they try to make Christine obscure by doing this. Now, this is a kind of an interesting conflict, because this time the Raoul character, Richard, is actually also one of the managers. So they kind of combined one of the two managers and Raoul together and made them a single unit. A gang attacks Eric, and we actually see in this scene that Eric has super strength and super speed. He actually is a sort of demonic, supernatural creature. So unlike most Phantoms, he actually earns the name Phantom. He's kind of ghostly. After Christine receives those negative reviews we talked about, Eric goes and murders the critic.
Truthfulness. I think I'd rather die than... As you wish.
Christine also goes to her father's grave to pray, and Eric is there playing on her father's violin. This is in the book and in almost no other versions, so kudos. The Ratcatcher's in this film too. He's a fan favorite. Everybody loves the Ratcatcher. And in this version, he's very memorable. He kind of reminds me of the Ratcatcher character in the 1960s version. I also really just enjoy the dynamic between Christine and Eric. I think that they have one of the most original and interesting dynamics as far as Phantoms and Christines who are actually in love.
In your dressing room, I could only teach you the words. Here, I can teach you the meaning.
But you wrote this.
It is incomplete. Perhaps some Mozart.
No. Play your music.
Come to me, and I will give you everything. Our souls are one.
No!
You are married to the music. You cannot serve two masters.
Eric gives Christine a ring, and I'm not sure that's in any other version. Even the musical, I don't know, the movie version of the musical kind of changes that to make it almost like an engagement ring, but I mean, he gives her a band, which is what he gave her in the book, like a wedding band. Eric makes Christine his bride, and I wonder if the ring is meant to trap Christine's soul in kind of an evil reincarnation, and maybe that's why she comes back 100 years later. Richard meets up with the inspector, who recruits him to hunt down the Phantom. Now, the skin that Eric stitches onto his face decomposes over time and must be replaced, and it's a really nasty scene where he cuts off the skin on his face, and when he's taking it off, it's almost like half healed. So he has to rip it off and open the wounds again to replace the skin with new skin. It's really gross. Again, great moment of horror, but my gosh, it's disgusting. Christine gives Richard a note that says to meet her at the masked ball, and I love the whole masked ball scene. It's just great.
Christine, this angel of yours, he's the Phantom.
He'll find me. I love you, Richard.
Who is this man? I must know.
After the Phantom kills Carlotta and her head is found in a stew, very creative Phantom kill, I gotta say, he kidnaps Christine and takes her below. Raoul and the policeman are led by the Ratcatcher down to the Phantom's lair, and they try to catch him.
Are you going to kill me now?
Everyone dies. I only choose the time and place for a few.
When do you choose for me?
This is either a wedding march or a funeral mass. You decide which.
Now, I gotta say that Richard is one of the most ineffectual Raouls ever, and it seems like the movie is kind of aware of that too, because this is the only version I know of where Raoul, Richard, gets murdered by the Phantom. This is almost like a treat for everybody who hates Raoul. Not only does he get stabbed, but he gets set on fire. The problem is that Richard is so ineffectual in this movie that it's not really as satisfying as I would like. Christine sets Eric's lair on fire and shoots Eric. And Eric is then shot again by the inspector. At this point, the ring slips off of Christine's finger, she topples backwards, and awakens in the 1980s again. Eric is actually there in the present and wakes her up. And I love both of them are more realistic in their acting. It's less melodramatic in the 80s, more the style of 80s acting. I think that's a nice little way to separate the two time periods. We see Eric using latex masks now to cover up his face, and as Christine sees that Eric, who is now a major music producer, has Don Juan Triumphant on his computer, she plays the music by accident and Eric reveals himself.
Love, music, they're forever. Now, it's just a matter of what you choose. Love or music.
Now, like I said before, I think many people overlook how tragic Eric is in this version too. Much like the book, he just wants to be loved for himself. Now sure, this time he caused his own deformity, but one has to wonder if maybe he regrets selling his soul, though it's never directly stated that he does. But I have to say, when you think about it that way, this is one of the most lonely Phantoms ever. It doesn't seem like he even really wants to be a murderer. Once he can replace his skin with latex skin, it seems like he stops killing altogether. But even when he asks Christine if she will choose music or to love him, she cannot choose to love him. this is really sad, because you have to wonder if maybe that would have changed if he hadn't sold his soul. Maybe she actually would have. I mean, granted, in that reality, he wouldn't be a murderer. Maybe that contributes something to it. She stabs the Phantom, and as he lays dying, Christine takes the floppy disks and the original copies of Don Juan Triumphant and rips them up and washes them away. We were told earlier that there was a legend about the Phantom of the Opera, that he can only be destroyed if his music was destroyed. Now, this is never actually said to Christine, but we can assume that everything we saw in the flashback is something Christine witnessed or heard during her recovered memory. So maybe Richard told her about it sometime and we just didn't hear about it. Or maybe she heard the legend when she was younger. Who knows? Again, it's kind of sad because now Eric has lost even the promise that his music will live forever. He lost his music, his love, and his soul, ultimately to get nothing in return. I know I shouldn't feel bad for a serial killer who literally skinned all of his victims alive, but I don't know, I still kind of do. Much like the top at the end of Inception or the photo at the end of The Shining, we're left with a little bit of a cliffhanger. It makes us wonder, does music or love ever die? Or was Eric right to say they live forever? Personally, I love this version. It's one of my very favorites, and I'd rate Robert Englund's performance up there among the top of the performances we've ever gotten from any Phantom. He's just wonderful. Yeah, he does bring kind of that cheesy horror movie style, but as I've said before, I kind of like a more over-the-top sort of acting. I don't really like it when people just kind of stand and whisper their lines and hope that it comes across dramatically, and it never does. I feel for this Phantom. I like this guy, even though he's awful. Robert Englund just brings a charm to this role that very few other actors could have given the subject matter. Jill Schoelen, for the most part, is still really good, although I would not say she is among my top Christines. I do think she's one of the most beautiful Christines. And in the modern sequences, I would say she's great. I love the originality. I love that they didn't go with the acid-scarred musician, and if they were not going to go with the book, at least they did something really unique and special with it. For my money, it's one of the top Phantom movies. It's incredibly different, so understand that might mean it's not your cup of tea. But I have to recommend that if you don't mind some bloody horror stuff, you need to check it out at least once. And it may be your favorite version. I mean, if you're the right type of person, I could easily understand this being your favorite Phantom movie. So thank you everybody for watching. God bless you, and I will see you in the next one.